8B.21, draft decision, Croatia, Italy, Montenegro, Venetian works of defense between the 15th and the 17th centuries. I now invite ICOMOS to present the transborder nomination of the Venetian works of defense. Croatia, Italy, and Montenegro. ICOMOS, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. This is the presentation of the ICOMOS evaluation of the Venetian works of defense between 15th and 17th centuries, the Stato da Terra and to the Western Stato da Mar. This nomination focuses on this period when the Republic of Venice reached its greatest extent of expansion and power. A series of defensive fortifications was established to protect its commercial interests throughout the Stato da Terra or terra firma, protecting the Republic from other European powers to the inland northwest, and the Stato da Mar or Domini da Mar, protecting the sea routes and ports in the Adriatic Sea to the Mediterranean and the Levant. This is a transnational serial nomination by 3 states parties, Italy, Croatia, and Montenegro. And the nominated components are situated both inland, representing the Stato da Terra, and along the coastline to the Mediterranean, representing the Western Stato da Mar. Some components of the fortifications of the entrances to Venice itself are also included. There are 15 components in this nomination. The map shows their locations across a span of more than 1,000 kilometers. 7 are located in Italy, starting from the top of the map, the fortified city of Bergamo, the fortified city of Peschiera del Garda, 4 components in the defences of Venice, and the city fortress of Palmanova. 5 components are located in Croatia, starting from the central part of the map and moving south, the defensive system of Zadar, the fort of San Nicola, 2 sites on the island of Hvar, and the fortified city of Kosula. And 3 components are located in Montenegro, the Fort da Mar in Herceg-Novi, the city of Kotor, and the fortified city of Ulcini at the bottom of the map. The World Heritage Committee will recognize that a number of the nominated components are located within existing World Heritage properties or World Heritage buffer zones of properties inscribed for other reasons. This is explained in the ICOMOS evaluation report. The Venetian Republic, or Serenissima, has a longer history than this period alone, centered on its prosperous capital and lagoon. At its peak, the Republic included expansive land and sea networks, with influence along the Dalmatian coast to the Mediterranean and the Levant. From the 15th century, the Venetian Republic became divided into these 2 states, the Stato da Terra and the Stato da Mar. The 16th century was the phase of experimentation and spread of new types of military structures. The introduction of gunpowder led to significant shifts in military techniques and architecture that are reflected in the design of fortifications. These are termed the alla moderna, or bastion system. The components of this nomination have been selected to demonstrate the transition and operation of the alla moderna defences, laying the foundations of a military culture that would spread throughout Europe in the late 17th century. Firearms dramatically changed military strategies, allowing attacks from greater distance and changing the relationships between ports, cities, and countrysides. The forts needed defence lines to protect the walls and used ditches, water barriers, clearings, and tunnels. Military architecture shifted from the earlier medieval square and round towers that protected the walls of Venetian towns to lower rounded towers, reinforced at their bases by robust earthworks and bastions. Urban forms had changed also to accommodate new types of buildings and layouts. The comparative analysis was the subject of many exchanges between the three states parties and ICOMOS. ICOMOS considered that there are anomalies in the way in which the selected components were associated with the two territorial spheres and the presented typologies. For example, the ICOMOS World Heritage Panel concluded that the rationale for inclusion of components that demonstrate defensive works in the 15th century had not been sufficiently established, given the focus on the ala moderna defences of the 16th and 17th centuries, and that the typology did not establish a basis for the inclusion of some, but not all, the elements of the defences of Venice itself. Given their long histories, it is unsurprising that many changes have occurred at some of the nominated components, including through wars and conflicts from the Napoleonic, Austrian and Ottoman periods and in the 20th century. Significant impacts are also evident from overly zealous conservation projects, redundant and poorly sited tourism developments, and natural disasters. There are various projects being undertaken by the three states parties to address these where possible, and the understanding of the carrying capacity and sustainable tourism planning is a needed priority at some of the sites. The ICOMOS World Heritage Panel considered that the defensive and trade networks of the Venetian Republic are clearly worthy of representation in the World Heritage List. However, the specific challenge is to determine which sites should be selected. As shown in this summary, ICOMOS concluded that the arguments for all 15 components were not sustained, and that criterion 2 was not demonstrated. However, ICOMOS considers that 6 of the 15 nominated components could demonstrate criteria 3 and 4, and the qualifying conditions of authenticity and integrity. These components are listed on the slide: the fortified city of Bergamo in Italy, the fortified city of Peschiera del Garda in Italy, the city fortress of Palmanova, Italy, the defensive system of Zadar in Croatia, the fort of San Nicola in Croatia, and the city of Kotor in Montenegro. These 6 properties also have satisfactory boundaries, protection, conservation and management, although there are a number of aspects that could be strengthened and are the subject of additional recommendations from ICOMOS. In conclusion, ICOMOS recommends that these 6 components of the nominated series of the Venetian works of defence between 15th and 17th centuries, Stato da Terra to the western Stato da Mar, Italy, Croatia and Montenegro, be inscribed on the World Heritage List on the basis of criteria 3 and 4. ICOMOS recommends that all of the remaining components should not be inscribed, with the possible exception of the site of the Fortamar of Herceg-Novi in Montenegro, which could be considered as an extension of this property in the future once the recently commenced studies and conservation works are completed. There are a number of additional recommendations proposed by ICOMOS, but due to the shortness of time, I'll not read them out. They are listed here and in the ICOMOS evaluation report. And of course, ICOMOS is ready to assist the 3 states parties as requested with the implementation of these recommendations. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, ICOMOS. And now I invite the committee members to express their comments. Cuba is the first. Cuba, the floor is yours.
Gracias, señor presidente. El conjunto de elementos que se nos presenta para esta nominación realmente es relevante. En primer lugar, quisiéramos reconocer la coordinación necesaria para trabajar en una nominación como esta. Pero queríamos sobre todo destacar el enorme impacto que tienen los elementos que se fundamentan en esta nominación para los sistemas defensivos que no solo se elaboraron en Europa, sino en América. Bajo esos nuevos criterios de defensa a partir del desarrollo de las nuevas tecnologías en las armas, en la guerra en general, pues ya existen en la lista del Patrimonio Mundial numerosos ejemplos de etapas posteriores que no son más que la continuación y la implementación en una nueva época y nuevos territorios de las ideas nacidas en ese momento. Cuba apoya la inclusión de este sitio en la lista del Patrimonio Mundial. Gracias.
Kazakhstan, the floor is yours, madam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. The history of the expansion of the Republic of Venice is clearly traced in these amazing component sites, which, keeping the spirit of history nowadays, is a basis for cultural flourishing. This is a valuable addition to the World Heritage mosaic. Let me congratulate us all and welcome the efforts ensured by the state parties concerned for the management and protection of this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Turkey, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Turkey is gratified by this nomination. We have probably the longest standing relations with the former Republic of Venice, going back no less than 500 years. We have exchanged ambassadors since the 1600s until the unification of Italy. This relationship was based on close trade and human relations, but was also political at times. The Palace of the Doges, as you know, has huge but as much beautiful paintings describing the conflicts we had during earlier centuries because of the questions arising from domination in the Eastern Mediterranean. But the real directing force has always been ever-enriching central cultural and trade relations. We therefore strongly support the inscription of this dossier as recommended by ICOMOS and congratulate the state parties. Thank you.
Thank you. Portugal, the floor is yours.
Again, very briefly, Mr. President, Portugal supports the inscription of the Venetian works of defence according to the proposal of ICOMOS. But let me stress that the fact that only 6 of the proposed 15 components were considered to have outstanding universal value does not withdraw importance or significance to the property as a whole, which is part of European and world history. We are well aware of the difficulty of developing serial nominations among different countries, and I therefore congratulate Italy, Croatia and Montenegro for preparing and presenting this very well succeeded nomination. I thank you.
Thank you. Philippines, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was an impressive file, very polished indeed. The Philippines congratulates the states parties of Croatia, Italy, and Montenegro for the inscription of the Venetian works of defense between the 15th and 17th centuries, which is undoubtedly an outstanding example of modern ala military culture. We commend the States Party for their relentless efforts in providing cross-cutting legal protection for the site. The Philippines requests the States Parties to work closely with ICOMOS in the development of a report that contains adequate documentation of all maps and reconstruction work within the site. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I have 5 respected state parties more. Let me please close the list. And the United Republic of Tanzania has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tanzania supports the decision to inscribe this property on the World Heritage List and congratulates the state parties of Croatia, Italy, and Montenegro in the inscription of this important site, and fully supports the draft decision. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Poland, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that we'll speak very briefly. That would like to warmly congratulate to the state parties for this fruitful international cooperation. This nomination presents important phase in the history of defensive architecture. It also presents exchange influences in different areas of the life as trade, but also its impact to the architecture. So we hope that this cooperation will be continued successfully in the future concerning managing of this site. Thank you.
Thank you, Poland. Jamaica. Jamaica has the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Jamaica congratulates the states parties for submitting an intriguing serial nomination we fully support the draft decision to inscribe the property under, or rather the serial nomination under criteria 3 and 6. Thank you.
Zimbabwe, the floor is yours, Excellency.
Thank you, Chairperson. Zimbabwe congratulates the state parties of Croatia, Italy, and Montenegro for this serial nomination. We also commend the state parties for the legal, administrative, management instruments that have been put in place since 2015. And we urge the state parties to continue with the coordination and to work together with ICOMOS in strengthening the management and protection of these sites, particularly those areas vulnerable to tourism pressures. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Ambassador. The Republic of Korea, the floor is yours. The Republic of Korea, the floor is yours.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Republic of Korea will not repeat all the compliments made by the previous speakers. We just would like to happily add our voice to congratulate the state parties of Croatia, Italy, and Montenegro on their successful inscription. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. So, ladies and gentlemen, if I do not see also an amendment, with your permission, we now go directly to Mr. Juma. Mr. Rapporteur, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We don't have any amendment proposed in this draft decision.
Thank you. If so, I now declare decision 41, Com 8b.21 adopted.
They are there within the floor now, otherwise we will not make it.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is visible that it is trans-border inscription. Let me congratulate Croatia, Italy, and Montenegro on behalf of the entire committee for the inscription of this property. And I understand that Italy wishes to take the floor first. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Since this is a shared nomination, we would like also to share the speech. So I will start, and then I will leave the floor to the distinguished colleagues of Croatia and Montenegro. And let me acknowledge the presence of the Mayor of Bergamo, Mr. Gori, who is here in representation of all the communities involved. And I would like to acknowledge, and thanks for the presence also, all the other representatives of the communities, the Mayor of Palmanova, Francesco Martinez, the Mayor of Peschiera del Garda, Maria Orietta Gaiulli, and in representation of the region of Lombardy, Cristina Cappellini, the Assessore for Culture. Mr. Chair, distinguished members of the World Heritage Committee and of its consultative organs, today Italy is very happy and proud to see the results of the fruitful cooperation which has been ongoing for years with our friends from Croatia and Montenegro. The Venetian Wars of Defense between 15th and 17th century, Stato da Terra, Western Stato da Mar, bear testimony of the state-of-the-art strategical and technological accomplishment of the Serenissima, which made it possible to build such complex architectural works in perfect harmony with their natural landscapes. These accomplishments go hand in hand with the historical and artistic expansion of the Republic of Venice towards the east. Extraordinary minds and energies were necessary to plan such innovatory defense works, which later became standard models in Europe and in other parts of the world. Please, Croatia.
Thank you. Let me just stress that we have also one citizen of Venetia more. He is at the Presidium, Francesco Bandarian. Croatia, the floor is yours, Excellency.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, distinguished member of the World Heritage Committee and of its consultative organs. I would like to point it to once again that beyond the original defense purpose, these works foster the creation of a network of small multicultural communities based on a trade, on economic exchange, which was way ahead of its time. This stands as a living testimony of its multicultural project. Dear colleagues, transnational candidatures represent a complex path which might sometimes tempt us to stay within our national boundaries when planning new future projects. This result proves that together we can indeed be stronger. Here with us is also Mayor of the City of Zadar and also a head of County of Šibenik, Kninska Županija, so they will say thanks.
Dear Chair, distinguished members of the committee, please accept our heartfelt thanks for your warm welcome to our proposal. We are committed, really, to pursuing our close cooperation in order to preserve these precious sites for the future generation in the spirit of a convention. Finally, we would like to give the floor to the Mayor of Bergamo, who represents here all the communities, promoting Kotor and Herzegovina as well, promoting this nomination that worked actively and passionately throughout the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, congratulations.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
distinguished members of the World Heritage Committee and of its consultative organs, I really want to thank you for the prestigious award attributed to the Venetian work of defense of our cities. It is a source of great pride and responsibility for all of us. With this transnational candidacy shared by each of our communities, we aim to express the values of peace and international cooperation that have always been inspiring the work of UNESCO. From today on, our efforts to preserve and enhance this new treasure of world heritage will be even greater. Thank you.
Thank you.